We're all essentially agreeing that conversations about sexism in video games should be had. We're just debating what a official rating for sexism would look like. And we're not necessarily saying that it's wrong or completely inappropriate. We're just asking how that would work. I don't think anyone here is saying, no, this shouldn't happen, right? Is anyone saying that?
I played a video game once where you have a daughter, so I think I pretty much know what it's like anyway.
David, Andrew, none of us are actually saying this, right?
Correct. None of us are saying that.
Yeah.
And so forth. We had obscenity laws, not suggestions by boards, on the books in this country before the Revolutionary War. And we have obscenity laws on the books now in 48 states. The problem with the Grand Theft Auto games, there are a lot of problems. Well, one that's very, very difficult is that you have sex and violence together, and you have violence visited upon prostitutes with whom you have just had sex. The problem with the Grand Theft Auto games, there are a lot of problems. Well, one that's very, very difficult is that you have sex and violence together, and you have violence visited upon prostitutes with whom you have just had sex. The problem with that is the Japanese found in training their soldiers in World War II that they would become more efficient killers if you would reward them after brutalizing them in training with geisha girls and a night of sex for them, so that they associated violence with the pleasure of sex. These two, and I'm a layman on this, but I know that from instruction I've been given by people that are experts, the sex and violence control parts of the brain are very proximate to one another. So here you have a game being played by teenage boys in which violence is wedded to sex, which is making rough sex and violence more likely to occur.
I just want to bring up one thing. I don't want to get away from this violence and sex conversation, but I do want to bring up one thing in terms of young boys in America playing these games, because the Washington Post did a 10-country study, and they said it turns out that the data doesn't support the connection between video games and violence. The world's 10 largest video game markets yields no evident statistical correlation between video game consumption and gun-related killings. And now, as someone, I grew up playing violent video games. I grew up with guns in the house. I had a 20 gauge shotgun as a birthday present when I was 13 years old. I used to shoot clay pigeons with my father, and I had Cinemax late at night in my house. I personally can say, I can personally say that I have none of these sort of psychotic issues that we talk about. Now, maybe I'm an anomaly.
Ricky, you're a small sample. The point is that President Clinton ordered the FBI and the Secret Service to study some of the common denominators in school shootings after Columbine. And they found that the one common denominator was the consumption by the perpetrators of violent entertainment, most notably violent video games.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Dr. Greenfield. The issue is you're not going to ever be able to prove 100% causality. There's still people arguing that cigarette smoking, that there's no good research that shows a causal relationship between smoking and lung cancer. And their lobbyists and the tobacco industry argued for years that there was no correlation. I like to look at it the other way around. How could you be exposed to something this toxic and have it not affect you, as opposed to proving it? The other thing that we need to understand is that when the pleasure centers of the brain are activated, which these games are designed to do, the amygdala lights up. The pathways, the neurohormonal pathways that go from the amygdala to the neocortex to the frontal lobes of the brain shut down. They literally shut off. So the areas of judgment or higher order judgment when you're in this sort of state are not accessible. And that's true, by the way, whether you're an adult or whether you're an adolescent in terms of brain development.
And Ricky, Take-Two has spent tens of millions of dollars, according to news reports, paying for advertising in media around the globe to influence behavior, that is, to purchase their game. And so here we have Take-Two and their fellow travelers suggesting that advertising can affect behavior, but playing a violent video game in which you have sex, kill prostitutes, kill cops. Now there's an uproar about one of the scenes in GTA 5 is that you torture someone with electroshock and then you pull his teeth out. Mm-hmm. Does Take-Two, how can Take-Two spend money to modify behavior and then say their game can't possibly in any instance ever influence or change behavior in any fashion whatsoever? It's ridiculous.
Right. I think what you're saying is interesting. And I do personally believe that there are problems with violent video games in regards to those who are under the age of 18 being able to consume them without parental consent or control or any sort of parental supervision to explain what is happening and talk about it. So I'm curious,
Ricky, let's get to the parental issue.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
The Federal Trade Commission, in their latest secret shopper study, has found that some big box stores will 40% of the time sell M-rated games, mature-rated games, to someone under the age of 17. Now, how is the parent? And the video game industry says they want parents to be involved in this process. If there's no parent in sight and the kid buys the game in violation of the store rules, in violation of the ESRB and the ESA system, then there's no parent there to intercept it. And then you don't, just as in my generation, you didn't tell mom and dad you had a copy of Playboy so that they'd take it away. You play it maybe at Jimmy's house, whose parents aren't as careful as you are, and so forth. So what they're doing is they aren't serious about the age rating system. And in fact, Amazon.com is selling this game, GTA 5, without even asking the age of the purchaser. So
right, but that can happen. But this isn't specific to video games. I can, if I was a child, I could go on Amazon and I could purchase whatever I wanted if I had my parents' credit card.
You can't buy age-restricted products like alcohol, tobacco, or firearms. And the industry says they want parents to make this decision, and then they sell millions of units through the internet, and their retailers don't ask the age of the purchaser.
Right.
Let me tell you why I got started in my efforts 20-some or more years ago against the entertainment industry. I represented some sexually abused women, and when you talk to a rape victim and you hear the role that the obscenity, the hardcore obscenity, played in the life of the person that raped her.
Are you taking sort of an Andrea Dworkin position here, Jack?
When Andrea Dworkin was alive, I worked with her. But let me finish my point, whether Andrea Dworkin was on board with this or not, which she was. The point is, you can talk all you want about critical acclaim and the artistic content of Grand Theft Auto 5. And by the way, the critics aren't terribly impressed, saying it lacks any humor and irony and so forth like the earlier installations. But to have sex with a woman and then kill her to get your money back, I'm wondering where the art is in that. And doesn't that say to teenage boys, send a message that they really shouldn't have? I mean,
Jack, I hate to disagree with you, but there are many points. There are many points that I agree with you on in terms of certain types of regulation. But just to think that teenage boys are getting the wrong message here, I think we're not giving the majority of teenage. I think we're not giving the majority of teenage boys enough credit. I think by the time you're teenage boys, you realize you're playing something that is transgressive, that you are taking part in something that is, quote, sinful or bad. Carly. There are many points that I agree with you on in terms of certain types of regulation, but just to think that teenage boys are getting the wrong message here, I think we're not giving the majority of teenage. I think we're not giving the majority of teenage boys enough credit. I think by the time you're teenage boys, you realize you're playing something that is transgressive, that you are taking part in something that is, quote, sinful or bad. Carly. I'm going to pull up one more comment from our viewers out there. This is from the Flume, who's sitting in the office right behind me. He says, I bought GTA last night and played it for 5 hours. I found it very relaxing and had an amazing time. I did not get up feeling any more violent than when I sat down. Anybody who kills after playing these games has pre-existing problems that aren't the fault of the game, period. Full disclosure, he is my boss and he's yelled at me 6 times today, so he's clearly had some issues playing that game. You guys, thank you so much for joining me. And we're all essentially agreeing that conversations about sexism in video games should be had. We're just debating what an official rating for sexism would look like. And we're not necessarily saying that it's wrong or completely inappropriate. We're just asking how that would work. I don't think anyone here is saying, no, this shouldn't happen, right? Is anyone saying that?